Well guys, it just recently happened to me. I made a huge mistake when I was shooting some photos for my client. Completely overlooked something that should have been fixed on site. And I can't go back to reshoot these photos, but I still have to deliver a good final photo for my client. What am I gonna do? Let's figure it out. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and for those of you who are new, my name is Fraser Almeida. I'm a photographer based in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I specialize in luxury real estate, architecture, and interior design. Today we're going to be reviewing composing and framing when it comes to exterior photography for that money shot, and also what happens when we make a mistake. You know, we're all human, it happens, we make mistakes, but what happens when it applies to our photography and we can't go back to reshoot it? These things happen, and we have to make sure that we have the skill set to overcome that to make sure we still deliver a good final product to our client. And remember guys, we are months away from this year's 2023 PMRE conference here in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's our 5th year anniversary, and I can't wait to see you all there. Whether you're a photographer, videographer, or in any type of media, this is the place to be. It's a place to learn, grow, and connect with so many people in the same industry. I can't wait to see you all there. It's going to be another amazing event. And guys, remember, in a couple of weeks, those early bird tickets are going to go on sale. So make sure you guys go to PMREconference.com to join that waitlist, because once those early bird tickets go on sale, they're going to go fast. Also, if you're interested in being a speaker or a sponsor for the event, make sure you go to the website to fill out an application. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get to this image breakdown. So this is the front twilight exterior of a home I shot in Las Vegas, Nevada. Something I want you guys to pay attention to. I want you guys to take a quick second, look at the photo and just visually, where's the eye leading you when you look at this photo? Take a couple seconds and just look. As you can see, based on the way the photo is shot, the eye is taking you straight up that pathway to the front door, to the chandelier right behind that door. That's the whole goal of that photo, right? We want to make sure that when we're composing the shot, that we're bringing our eye, our viewer, to the correct position. Now, I want to show you one more photo, and I want you now to tell me, where do you think your eye is taking you now? So take a look at this next photo. So here's the other photo. Here I've moved the tripod a couple steps over to the left, which is actually the center point of the home. Now take a quick second and now tell me where the eye is leading you. As you can see, even though that pathway is there and that front door is there, it's not the same composition, and it's not doing the same thing as the first image. This image is actually taking you straight to the center of this column right here, right? That's where it's taking you. Because it's a one-point perspective and all those convergent lines are going into that one center point, everything is leading you into this area right here, which is this center, which even though it's a leveled out, centered image of the exact home, but the problem with that though is, where is it taking our eye? It's taking us to a column, which doesn't really do anything for the home. We want to bring our viewer into the home rather than being stopped at the column in front of that garage. That doesn't do any justice for the home, for the seller, or the buyer of the property. So going back to the other image, let's take a look at that one more time. So as you can see here, now that we're able to shift over to the right in front of that door, we're able to bring our viewer, our eye, up that pathway and into that front door behind, looking at to the chandelier, which is what we want. We don't want to be stopped in front of that garage door looking at that column. We want to make sure that we take our time when we're on these shoots and make sure that we don't just pop our camera right in the center of the home and just shoot it. Look at your home, determine, okay, where is that door at? Now, in some instances, there's doors that's way to the far right. It won't work, but in a situation like this, where the door's off just a hair to the left or the right, you want to make sure that, at least for me, what worked for me and what's worked for my clients is, I always try to make sure that I try to bring the eye towards that pathway up that staircase to that front door, rather than being centered with the house and being stopped visually by that column. I want to do that so that we're inviting the viewer into the home rather than being stopped by any barriers that's going to visually stop our eye from getting past that front door. So as you can see here, that center point is right here where that door is at, and all our converging lines are coming to that center point. Being that this is a one-point perspective, this is my actual center point of the home. And pretty much what I've done here is I've done you can call it a fake tilt shift. So I've composed a little bit wider, which as you can see here, so this is the actual raw unedited photo, right? The purpose of this is just to show you how I got the fake tilt shift effect. So I'm zooming out just a little bit, and the purpose of that is so that for two reasons. Number one, this house is a little bit higher. So if I zoom out and if I crop in from the bottom, I can kind of make it look like it's not so vertically high. I can kind of balance the house a little bit better with the sky and the street. But also, I have a lot of bleed room from the left and the right that I can compose and recompose this image so that it's perfectly centered. So once I've recomposed, even though if you notice here, here's our center point, right? And like I said, all our converging lines are coming here to the center point. Once I recompose it, I'm going to make sure that my frame is right here, right? So I'm not going to be using any of this stuff here. This is just extra bleed room so I have something to work with. My main focus is going to be that main center point there, which is going to give me my final composition, which was this one right here. So as you can see, we've pretty much cropped that image in. We've eliminated all that empty dead space and just really brought it in to focus specifically on the house. And you can't tell that everything's off center. Like I said, it's shifted over just a hair, but it's enough that it serves the purpose of bringing our eye up that pathway to that front door, which is what we want, rather than being stopped in front of that column where the garage door is at. We don't want that. Besides that, there is one more thing if you guys noticed. Let's go back to that other ambient photo here. As you can see, these garage doors don't look good, even though, you know, it's a beautiful home, but the detail inside this garage door does not look good. So I wanted to make sure that in editing, I kind of cover that up. So with the lights off, the garage doors are just completely black, right? So I'm going to make it so that in editing, I'm going to just add black back into those windows. I'm going to blur it out so that you still see something in there, but you don't really know what's behind it. It just gives us a better, cleaner image rather than drawing our eye into something which there's no purpose for that, right? We want our main focus to just go up that pathway and wondering what's behind that door where that chandelier is at. So let's take a look at this into Lightroom and Photoshop so you guys can see how I built this one up and took it from that base ambient to the final image for the client. So here we are in Lightroom, and as you can see, here's our final edit. And let me just show you exactly how we built this up. So we started off with 5 brackets here. So my initial settings for the camera was ISO 250. I'm at 21 millimeters at f6.3, which allows me to get nice, quick brackets without having to spend too much long time having the shutter open. We can be kind of in and out of there quick as we're doing these twilight shoots because, you know, time is very precious when it comes to twilights. We're going to be running around in the front and the back trying to get as much as we can before that sun changes position and gets either way too dark or way too blue, right? We want to have that nice balance of ambient and light between the home and the natural environment to shoot the house in. So looking at the photos here, we have our base ambient here, and then like I said, we have our 5 brackets. So just pretty much a stop apart so that we have these 5 brackets. And then all I did is in Lightroom first, merge these images together. So I selected them, right-clicked, and go to Photo Merge HDR. And then once that happens, what ends up happening is you'll get the dialog box here. Now, if you batch process this, you won't get this. It'll just automatically do it based off of the settings you have here. But what it'll do is just pretty much take all those 5 images and create a huge raw file out of those raw images. So that way you have a lot of leverage to push and pull those sliders so that way you don't destroy the image. It still retains its beauty and its detail without adding grain and pixelation to the image. So looking at here, this is the actual finished HDR image. So if we go to the before photo, this is pretty much what Lightroom produced. But if we see here, as you can see, I've already cropped in. This is what I talked about, that fake tilt shift effect. You know, I have all this area here to work with, but all I care about is just focusing and zooming onto the house so I'm centered within the house. And because I want that composition where I'm going up that pathway, all I need to do now is just compose perfectly so I have a nice balance of the left, right, top, and bottom of the home, which is what I did here. So I just cropped it in. So now it's a nice balance of the property and it looks really good so that we can really draw our eye towards that pathway up to the front of the stairs. And then besides that, the only other settings that we did was I changed my profile to neutral, which what that does is it just gives me a little bit more of a flatter image to work with. So I have a lot more information in the highlights and the shadows. White balance, I just changed it based off of my feel of what I thought looked good. So I had it at 5750. Exposure, I bumped it up to 30%. Highlights, I dropped it down to negative 97. Shadows, 63. Whites, I left it the same. Blacks, negative 51. I added a little bit of clarity. And then obviously we have our lens corrections here. The initial leveling I did on the tripod looked good, so I didn't need to do any more transformation of the vertical lines or anything like that. And then besides that, we did apply a mask here. So we have one mask here for our sky. So if we you can kind of see the overlay there. So that's those settings on that. It's pretty much, I dropped the temperature down just a little bit so that it makes it a different color of that blue. And then I just bumped up the saturation so that we really get that punch in the sky. And then other than that, one thing I always like to do, whether it's daytime or twilight, is I love darkening the street. So it just gives it a little bit more of a polished look. So if I take that off, you can see with it and without it, just that little bit of darkening that street just kind of gives it that refined, polished look for a really nice, clean image, and really draws your eye straight into the home rather than giving more attention to the street itself. And that's pretty much it. As you can see here, we have this garage door, and there's no reason we need to see this, what's inside there. There's nothing really there. I mean, there you got a tool chest there, but it doesn't really serve the property anything good by having that there. So with the lights off, you can't tell here, but with the lights off, those garages go completely black. So I talked to the realtor and we agreed that I'm just gonna black it out in Photoshop so that you don't get attention drawn into that garage. Instead, we get attention drawn to the house rather than trying to figure out what's inside that garage. So the final output eventually came out to this. So as you can see, I just added a Gaussian blur to the garage, and then I masked it out and I added a black to the actual glass panels there, and that's pretty much it. And I'll just show you really quick how I did that. So if we open it up in Photoshop. So as you can see, here's our base layer here, starting off with. Our next layer here, what I did is pretty much on the garage itself, I just applied a Gaussian blur. So I made a selection around these windows and I applied a Gaussian blur. So the Gaussian blur pretty much just, all that does is just kind of blurs it all out, so it doesn't make it a detailed photo. It kind of just adds a fadeness it looks like a film on it. So that's before, that's after, and it really helps to hide the details of what's behind that garage. And then after that, I just added a black and white filter to it, and then on top of that, I colored it black, and I dropped the opacity down to 59%, and that just really helps to just, really not give any attention at all to what's behind there. You get a subtle hint that, okay, we can see through that garage, but we don't need to show exactly what's there. And that's pretty much it, very simple. So before and after, just that subtle touch allows you to just not pay attention, your eye going towards that garage, and instead going straight up that pathway. So we save that and then just bring it back into Lightroom, and you saw the settings we did already, so that's already applied. And then we had that cropped already, ready to go, and that's it. Deliver that to our client, and they were very happy. So, the difference between going from this composition here to this composition, right? I mean, look at that. Going from this composition where the center of your eye is focused right here where this column's at, and then just shifting over a couple steps to this, what a huge difference it makes as to visually taking your eye exactly where you want, rather than taking to a spot that stops them as you can see here, you're taking to a spot that invites them into the home. All right, guys, that's our first image. Let's get to this next image and let's talk about what happens when we make a mistake when we're on our shoot and we have to still deliver that photo to our client, even though we realize that we made that mistake and we have to overcome it. These next two images is what I talked about in the beginning of this video about making a mistake. Like I said, we're all human and it's all gonna happen to us no matter how much of a professional you are. But let's take a look at what happened to me and how I overcame it. So here's the first image. This is the final image that I delivered to the client. But based on what you guys see here, can you tell what was the issue and what I ended up fixing? Take a moment and see if you can figure out what happened. I'm sure you guys found many things that probably went wrong, but let me show you exactly what did go wrong for me on this shoot. So here's my unedited ambient image, and here you can definitely see what the problems were. Number one, look at this pillow. I was running around so fast that usually I'm good at this kind of stuff. I can pick out and point out the details in what's out of place and whatnot, but for some reason, I just completely overlooked it this day. I think it's because we had a lot going on. The fireplace wasn't working. The maintenance guy was there. There was a lot running through our head. The realtor was there trying to turn things on and off, and we were just trying to figure things out. So at the end of the day, my mind was preoccupied with so many things, but that still doesn't mean that I shouldn't have been able to catch something like this. So obviously, we can't deliver a photo like this. Two things. Number one, the pillowcase, and number two, the fireplace here. There should be flames in there. The reason why the maintenance guy was there was because the issue with this fireplace is it works, but it doesn't stay on. It only stayed on for about 5 seconds and then it was shut off. So because it did work, I made a judgment call and I told the maintenance guy, you know what, just hang around. I'm gonna shoot all my compositions. And at the end of the day, all I need is two compositions. One, which is a 1-point perspective of the flames on and a 2-point perspective of the flames on. Those two angles will be all I need to Photoshop in those flames into all my other images. So I don't have to sit there and waste time having him be in the frame, holding the button and all this kind of stuff. I can do my shoot and at the end of the day, get the frames that I needed for the fire so I can bring it back into Photoshop and add that in after the fact. So obviously the flames are the easiest thing to do, right? But that pillowcase is not easy. But the saving grace in this particular shot is because it's a 1-point perspective and because things are symmetrical to a degree, we can use that to our advantage. So pretty much what I did is, to fix this, is I took this left chair here in Photoshop, cloned it, dragged it over here, and then I flipped it so that it was just a mirror of that chair, and I just Photoshopped it into the other chair, and you didn't even notice the difference. Doing that for this situation worked because of the angle and the composition that I had. But it doesn't always work in all situations, and I'll show you on the next photo here why I couldn't use the same approach. So let's take a look at this also back in Photoshop and Lightroom so you can see how I actually built this up and fixed that issue that we encountered. So here we are in Lightroom, and just like before, same thing, we have our 5 brackets here merged into Lightroom as a HDR, and then eventually these are the general settings that I did on the photo. So Adobe Neutral for the profile. I left the white balance as shot. Exposure, added a little bit there. Highlights, shadows, whites I didn't touch, blacks I added some, and clarity, and that's it. Besides that, I think the final image itself, I did drop the white balance a little bit so it wasn't so warm. If you notice here, yeah, I did. So if you look at the final, I did drop it down at -10 on the temperature just so it's a little bit more cooler, not so warm. But let's take a look at this final. So if you can notice, this is the before, which the pillow is completely off and there's no fireplace there. And this is our fire here with the corrected pillow. And then pretty much what I did is for the flame, if I show you here, here is, as you can see, here's the maintenance guy. And literally, like I said, the flames would go off after you turn them on. So he was just holding it there so I can get my shot. So because that composition was a 1-point perspective, simple. All I needed was just a 1-point perspective. So I just grabbed that shot here. which I actually ended up using this one here. It was a nice clean composition with the flames looking good. So I brought that layer and then the this layer here into Photoshop. So let me just open this up. So here's our base layer in Photoshop. And as you can see, the first thing I did was I made a selection around this area of that chair, right? That's pretty much the main area I want to bring into this other area here to replace. So once I did that, I transformed it, which is right here. I just flipped it. Now there was a little bit of a manipulation, so I just used the warp tool or the distort tool to kind of get this looking the way I needed it. And then I applied, if I take this off, you can see there's how it kind of comes off of this a little bit too much. So I just kind of painted out the areas that didn't work for me and just kept the good bits that did work. So if I take that off and on, I mean, you can't even tell that I did anything. It looks like it was already there, part of the scene. But like I said, taking the time to fix our mistakes goes a long way for ourselves and our clients. So other than that, here's our fireplace. So like you saw before, I just grabbed that flame and then I transformed that onto here so that the corners fit perfectly, and I just literally brush that in. And then other than that, like I always like to do these to TV just to make them nice and clean and give it a little bit of a polished look. I just added a black gradient onto the TV, and that's it. So going from our original file here, which was here, adding the chair, and then adding the flame and TV, that's it. Going from, like I said, a mistake to a final polished image that we can deliver to our client and not have to worry about asking to come back and reshoot this property. They don't even need to know that we made a mistake. All they care about is having a good looking photo. All right, let's take a look at our next image here. So here's our next image, and just like before, we already know that every single photo and composition I shot of this property at this time, the pillows were all wrong. So it wasn't like it was just that one image that you shot previously. It was all the images. So any compositions that I shot, that pillow was off. And unless it was in a position where I was at an angle where you didn't see it, then I was okay. But in a situation like this, it was definitely visible. So obviously here you can see that I, like I said, replaced the fire and I also fixed the pillow. But in this situation, it's completely different from the previous one. The previous one, we had that 1-point symmetrical image where it was easy to just make a selection of that left chair, clone it, flip it, and pop it onto that right chair. But in this one, it doesn't work that way. As you can see, look at what's happening here. The area of the chair, which is right here, is covering that pillow, right? Whereas here, it's not. And we need to see that part of the pillow and the cushions itself. So there's a little bit of a challenge here. Also, the perspective of this side of the chair does not line up with the perspective of this side of the chair, right? So it's not a simple matter of just, cloning and copying this whole thing and transferring it here. That won't work because the perspective is completely off. That chair does not fit by just cloning and pasting, not at all. So what do? Well, luckily, when I shot this in the afternoon, that issue didn't happen. In the afternoon when I shot this, everything was perfect. The pillows were nice and straight. They were right, nice and centered, and I didn't have any of these issues. So I think I can go ahead and use that to my advantage in a situation like this so that I can fix it. Also, same thing with the fireplace. Remember we talked about getting two positions, that 1-point perspective and that 2-point perspective. So let's take a look at this real quick in the ambient. And as you can see, now you can really see how those chairs don't line up. This chair and this chair are complete representations of the angles and the positions of those pillows and those cushions, right? So we can't just, like I said, copy and paste that. We got to make sure that we do a little bit more manipulation to the image because this is not going to work like the previous image. And then obviously we need to add in our flames here and then just, black out our TV. So as you can see, here's our daytime photo. And in here, everything fits perfectly, right? We don't have that issue that we're talking about. Now our chairs fit perfectly in the scene. Everything looks good. It's exactly the way it should be as far as perspective and the positioning of those cushions. The only thing here that I needed to change was the white balance. It's obviously way too cool here, so it needs to be warmed up so it matches the color temperature of the nighttime photo. So let's take a look at this back in Lightroom and Photoshop to see how we eventually build this one up for our client. So same thing here. As you can see, we have our 5 brackets in Photoshop and same settings, ISO 250. This one I shot a little bit more wider, 17 millimeters. I'm still at f6.3. So I just did my 5 brackets, merged those together in Lightroom, and I created an HDR, which is this image, which is just pretty much a higher dynamic range image, which is a lot more information in the raw file. So Adobe Neutral for my profile, just give me a little bit more of a flatter image. And then exposure, I bumped it up a hair, highlights, shadows, whites left it the same, added some blacks and clarity, and that's pretty much it. And then from here, the second image I brought in was, so here's our daytime composition. As you can see, it's very similar. It's a little bit off, but it's close enough. And all I needed to do from here was just add a little bit more warmth to the image so it kind of balances better with the nighttime photo. So I brought that and my my other edit here into into Photoshop. So let's take a look at that. So let's build this up. So here we are in Photoshop, and let's start from the bottom. Here's our base layer. And the next thing we did here was pretty much, you can't see it, but all I did was make a selection around that other image, which was, this is the daytime photo. And I brought that in. I warped it a little bit so that it kind of fits the perspective of the actual chair itself. And then if I take this off, you can see, as you can see, there's a lot of light and shadow information that doesn't make sense. So I had to just keep the areas of the chair that worked with this scene and lighting conditions. So what I did is, once I kind of got it in there and I kind of had it fit perfectly, I just masked out the other areas that didn't work. So as you can see, that's the before and after. I just kept pretty much the main cushion area within the inside of the chair rather than the outside where the pattern areas are at. Next, I added a little bit of levels to just add some crunch to it. Added a curve to just drop it down a little bit. It was a little bit too bright because obviously there was sunlight coming onto there. Next, hue saturation. I just toned that down a little bit so I can kill off some of that saturation. And then same thing, I added another curve to just drop down the exposure of it. Next, here's our fireplace. And then same thing here. Let me go back into Lightroom. Here's our other angle for the fireplace. This is the actual one I ended up using. If you remember, I said that they had to be holding the button, otherwise it would go off in 5 seconds of flame. So what you don't see here is that same guy in the previous photo, he's hiding perfectly behind the fireplace like a turtle and allowing me to get a good frame clean so I can have the information I need to edit this in Photoshop. So thank you to the guy. I really appreciate him helping me out here. But because it's a 2-point perspective and similar to the other angle, I knew that I can bring this in with just a little bit of Photoshop manipulation to make it fit. So going back into Photoshop, there were 2 flames that I tried to see which one I liked. There was this one and there was this one. I think I like this one better. This one was a little bit too hot. So I ended up going with this one. And then all I did here was I just added a levels to it. So it kind of balances out a little bit better. And then I just kind of cleaned with the edges. So once I warped this to make it fit within the actual perspective of that fire pit, I kind of just removed some of the areas that were unnecessary. So if you see here, that's the before, that's the after. It's pretty close, but I just kind of cleaned up the other areas around, so I had the natural color and glow of what was already there in the scene, and then all we did was just pretty much just add the flames in there by itself. And that's it. No one could even tell the difference. And like I said, going from this with the pillow and no flames to the final here. I mean, a little bit of work goes a long way, like I said, for ourselves and for our client, because I couldn't go back to reshoot this. I had to still deliver a good photo, and I can't just not deliver this, and I can't just deliver it as is. So thank God that I have the skill set to be able to accomplish what I needed to deliver this final photo. And same thing for you guys. As you guys get into this industry, mistakes are going to happen, and don't worry about it. What matters is that when you overcome that mistake, it's something that you could take onto your next shoot, because if this ever happens again, at least you have that arsenal of tools in the back of your head that okay, you know what? If there's no fire pit, maybe then there's a way I can add those flames later on. If the pillow messes up, well, maybe I can use that same perspective in the daytime to replace that pillowcase at nighttime and make it work, and nobody could even tell the difference, right? So we're always being challenged, and that's one of the things I love about this job. Of course, we want to do a perfect job all the time, but it never happens that way. Sometimes we run into problems like this, and we face these situations, and I love that it's a challenge, and I love when it's not just the same thing all the time, that I get to, face this challenge and overcome it. And it's a great thing that I can do that and deliver something to my client, and they're happy with it, and they couldn't even tell that anything was even done. So going back into Lightroom, as you can see here, pretty much we went from our image here, which was no fire pit, pillow that's not correctly in position, and then the TV is not blacked out, to our final image here, which is a nice clean fireplace, a perfectly positioned pillow, and a nice clean TV back there, and that's it. Final delivery for our client, and we're all happy, all said and done, without having to worry about hearing something from our client that we did a bad job, right? We always want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're delivering a good job regardless of the situation that happened to us. So guys, thank you all again. I hope some of these tips helped you guys out, because I'm sure you guys are going to encounter this when you're out there shooting. Whether it's, like I said, that front of the house when you're shooting a home and you have a situation like that where you have a pathway up that front door, or just a door by itself, or whatever it is, try composing for that door first, and then recomposing later on the computer, so that way you have a better image that represents the viewer into the home, rather than being stopped by a garage door or a pillar or something like that. It's not going to work in all situations, but in the situation that I presented to you today, it does work, and I hope that you guys can use that information for your own shoots. And same thing, when it comes to making mistakes, it's going to happen. Sooner or later, you guys are going to make a mistake, but don't worry about it. Just take the time, step back, and analyze the scene, and just, ask yourself, okay, what can I do? Can I redraw this whole thing? Can I take images from the daytime? Can I clone and, flip and copy and paste the image? There's many ways to fix a problem. So having the skill sets, going to these conferences, going to these workshops, learning on YouTube, whatever it is, but facing these challenges that happens to you on the daily is going to make you a better photographer in the long run for yourself and for your clients. All right, guys, thank you all again for joining me on this video. I hope you guys found some tips and techniques that's going to help you out when you guys are out there shooting, making mistakes, and delivering that final photo to the client. And remember to like and subscribe, guys. It really helps the channel out, and it allows me to continue to make these type of videos. Also, if any of you guys have suggestions for a type of video that you guys want to see, or just a question you have in mind in regards to real estate, architecture, interior design, whatever it is, leave a comment below, let me know, because I'll be more than happy to try to make a video that'll help answer some questions for you guys. Also, if any of you guys are curious as to the equipment that I'm using, go to the link below. You guys can see my full arsenal of photography gear, lighting gear, and equipment that I use on the daily for my clients for real estate, interior design, and architecture. Well, guys, thank you all again for joining me on this video, and until next time, keep on shooting.